it's what made me get up every morning at 5:30, go to bed every night at midnight. And I mean, my wife knows, she's like, is this gonna be the last one for a little while? Because when I was in that zone, it's like I'm all in and I'm like going to war every day. And I'm somewhat what can seem very stressed out. I don't feel stressed out all too often, but can definitely seen that way to other people. So it was just interesting because of the amount coming off the other raise, and then with interest rates coming up and us not having to rate lock yet. So it's just like I felt like I had to go into overdrive and do that. So it was good to be able to close that one though, and it's off. And everything we bought in 2022, we are absolutely crushing it.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today we got someone who is probably the top multifamily operator under the age of 35. He's doing big things in this space. He's got 1,800 apartment units and just flew out from Wisconsin to be on this show. I got none other than Justin Spaulding. Justin, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you for the compliment. That's a big compliment there, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. We first connected a while back on Instagram, social media, and you came on my old podcast, the Multifamily Takeoff, which is virtual, and we talked shop. That was probably 1.5 years, 2 years ago. But it's good to finally connect.
I did go back and look. I think we were at like 800 units then. So we bought 800, 900 units last year. So, but yeah, I think I went back and looked to see the bio, and that's where I was at.
It's crazy to think about just the progression. But you flew out and excited to finally connect in person, man. Good to finally connect and going to our meetup tonight, and excited
looking
for
forward to it.
Yeah, so fill me in, man. So since I had you on the last podcast 1.5 years, 2 years ago, what have you been up to since?
I mean, grinding, right? I mean, it's like, you know, I'm coming to San Diego and I put that out there and you're saying, yeah, you can stay the night at this place and leave the next morning. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to get out. I'm taking a red eye home tonight. Right. So I'm in San Diego for like 5 or 6 hours because I've got like 8 or 9 meetings tomorrow right off the red eye. But that's kind of what it takes when you're trying to build this thing the right way. And it's a grind. But when you love what you do too, you're excited every single morning to get up and get at it. So.
I remember when you told me that, because most guests, they'll fly in, they'll stay for the night, and then they'll go back the next day. Yeah. But when you're like, hey, I'm flying in.
Like, no offense to San Diego, but I'm like, what the fuck? What am I going to do at the beach alone?
Dude,
my
get
family's not here. My wife and my kid, they're not here. You know, my mom and dad aren't here. So I'm like, what am I got other stuff I got to go do. I can take a vacation another day.
I get it though. You're dialed and you're in the zone. And, you know, in order to get from where you are now to the next level, because there's always another level, you have to sacrifice certain things, right? And you have to be super dialed and you have to be strategic on how you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me about what have you been up to since I had you on the show 1.5 years, 2 years ago? You had about 800 apartment units. Now you got 1,800 units.
Yep. We're at 1,814. We got another smaller deal under contract right now. We're negotiating a couple other deals. So we could be at 1,900 units here in a couple months. So yeah, I mean, we've been getting out. I mean, we really work our lists, and I really always talk about our investor list and our investor database and working that database. But then we're also always working our property database. Over the last 10, 11 years, I've really accumulated a lot of properties in the areas that we want to invest in, which we focus on the Midwest. We're in Wisconsin, and we make phone calls and cold calls and start to build relationships directly with those owners. We're fortunate enough to be able to buy about 60 to 70% of our deals. They're off market. And so that gives us a big advantage, especially right now. We're not feeling as much pain across most of our deals, like some people are who maybe overpaid and we're buying at 3 caps. I mean, we bought at 5.5 caps to 6.5 caps this entire time. Mm-hmm. So that's really that's paid off dividends a lot, big time for what we're going through right now.
And how are you guys sourcing deals right now?
So the main thing is, I mean, we work our database. So I have, again, anytime I'm driving by a property, like if me and my wife are going to go to breakfast, we might take a different route every time. And if I see like, that's a new property, I write down that address and I'm finding out who the owner is. I'm adding it to the database. So I'm calling. We're doing that all the time. But then when you become known as a closer, I'm not a guy that retrades. I don't complain about, I'm not nitpicky through the due diligence process. I realize part of my marketing is working with these sellers and making a transaction easy for them, because I've had a lot of sellers reach out and want to then invest with me or recommend someone else to invest with me, or their buddy also owns 200 apartments and they recommend that person sells those apartments to me because I made the transaction easy and I wasn't an a-hole. So that's been a big advantage for us as well.
I love that. And for the listener out there, retrading basically means when you have a property under contract right before the end of due diligence, some buyers will actually try to retrade, or in other words, try to renegotiate the pricing and the terms of the acquisition, which is something that's frowned upon for the most part. It's not a good reflection on your reputation. It doesn't look good in the eyes of the broker or the seller. But sometimes you might be in a situation to where it makes sense to retrade. So I think one caveat to that rule would be like, let's say the seller told you all along that, hey, this thing has brand new
Yep.
roofing, but then you get in there in the inspection, you get a roofer up there and they're like, hey, these roofs are shot and it's going to cost you $140,000 to replace them. That is a reason to retrade.
It's got to be a blatant kind of lie, or
Yes.
and I mean the way that we do due diligence. I mean, with our teams going through all the units, and we do the property condition assessments, and the way that we go about looking at these deals, we will typically find if they do try to cover something up. And at that point, then again, I try not to be hostile, but I just say, hey, we gotta figure something out here. And I mean, there's been times, that I've had to go back and do that, but I don't go and just try to absolutely crush that person on the back. And I say, hey, look, this is an unexpected $300,000 that we're going to have out of our pocket in the next 24 months.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about this? And I try to work collaboratively with them to not blow the deal up. I'm not trying to be a deal killer,
Sure.
and I'm not trying to be an absolute shark either, where I'm absolutely taking advantage of the person. So a lot of times we might even split that difference, or they might cover 70% and I cover 30%, or whatever. We try to move forward from
Yeah,
there.
and sometimes you like to maybe like take a little bit, but then also give a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, if you can concede this, we'll put a little bit extra non-refundable
Yep.
just to give them a little bit more certainty,
Right.
So you guys are finding deals right now off market, even in this interest rate environment that we're in. Do you feel like it's easier or harder right now in this interest rate environment to find deals?
So we closed 460 units in August. We raised $21 million for that deal.
Oof.
And and that was
That's a
coming,
big-
and
that's
that
a
was
big-
coming right out of 90 days prior to that. I raised 11 million for a 372 unit.
Mm.
When we closed that 372 unit, the very next day I went and wrapped up this 460 unit. I'm like, I had no idea I was going to raise $21 million coming right out of the $11 million raise. But you have to commit, and then you got to put in the action and go do it. But since we closed the 460 in August, I started to realize, obviously, with how much we really squeezed that one in, we still really got favorable long-term debt on that. But then things really started to change, and when things change with interest rates and the interest rates increasing, I started to have a couple conversations with sellers, but they were not realizing that the price had to change because the debt was different.
Right.
And so it just became very unrealistic, and it wasn't a atmosphere I could really play ball in. And so I really just dove back into operations, and I've been focusing on the operations of our company since then. And now, late December, early January, again, I kind of started reaching out to our list again, and we're starting to see some people understand that, hey, if you're wanting to sell now, things are a little bit different than they were a year and a half ago. It's not
Yeah.
the same environment.
In seller expectations, I feel like in August, October even of
Yeah.
last year, were still very high. And I feel like now for the first time early this year, you're starting to see those seller expectations across all asset classes in commercial real estate starting to taper down a little bit
Yep.
to where maybe you can find some discounts,
Yep.
right? And I think you brought up a good point that like when you get a deal under contract right now, especially in this rate environment that we're in, I mean, the Fed was doing 75, right? They were crushing
So
them.
fast.
Yeah. And so
fast.
I think the important thing to remember that you mentioned that's smart that a lot of buyers right now are not understanding is if these escrows take 60 to 90 days to close.
Mhm.
And so if you're underwriting to a 4.75 rate,
Yeah.
you got to assume, hey, by the time we close, this might be 5.25.
Yeah. Well,
you
that's
know?
what we did when we closed the 460. We were about 70 days out from that when there was there had been a couple increases that went on. And, I'm like, okay, we have to change our assumptions here and make sure that we're still good. Otherwise we're going to have to, and we changed the assumption. Then we end up getting a rate that was about 10% lower than what we thought we were going to be all in at. So that was obviously favorable for us. But yes, you have to look out for that stuff and keep an eye on it, or it's gonna be a rough operation there for a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So take me back a little bit. How did you first get into real estate? Because I know you're a football player,
Dude,
right?
Yeah, yep. So
College football
So I
player?
played college football, Division III football player.
What position?
I was running back.
Wow.
So I'm like five. I mean, I like to round up, so let's call it 5'10".
Sure.
Right? You probably know my real height when we're standing next to each other. Probably more like 5'9", whatever.
Yeah.
But I played at about 200 pounds. I weigh about 180 now, right? So I played running back. Was at a powerhouse Division III school, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. They won like 7 national championships in the last like 15
Wow.
years or so.
And you were the starting running back.
No, I played special teams there my freshman year,
Okay.
and then I ended up actually transferring out after that first year to the University of Dubuque. And when I was at Dubuque, I became a All-American and multiple time All-Conference guy. Well, my sophomore year, I'm like, I have no idea what I actually want to go to school for, right? And I just basically it was spring break 2009, and I was with my family in Chicago, and I walked around the corner and I saw what was Trump Tower going up, And politically, I don't care what people say. I love Donald Trump's books and stuff. Were like really what turned me on to real estate.
For sure.
So I love the guy for that reason, because I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for me seeing that building. Then I immediately went to a bookstore right across the street on Michigan Avenue, picked up a couple Donald Trump books, and I picked up You Got It Sitting Over Here, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I read those books, and like by the time I got done with those 3 books, I read in record time. Like I was not a reader, didn't always do all my schoolwork, right? But I went through those books, and I'm like, it just blew my mind. And I was obsessed. And so I actually stayed in school to still play football. If it weren't for football, probably would have dropped out to start my own business. And, I just picked up 100 books, 150 books off Amazon throughout college, read them. I got out and started looking at anything I could look at. And I'd get the financial statements and be like, okay, why does it seem like lawn mowing costs so much? You should be able to do that for cheaper. So I would just like do these different scenarios if I own the property.
Right.
And so then that's just kind of how I started. I went out and did that hundreds of times through college but that gave me the experience of like, that was the beginning of me underwriting without even really realizing it. And then I bought my first deal when I was a year out of school at the age of 22.
You know what's crazy about that story is like, you went to college and people spend so much time and money going to school, but like where you found the most value was just reading a couple books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the Donald Trump book. You learn more out of those books. And look what those 2 books led to versus all the time that you spend in the classroom.
Well, and so like, and I mean, I'm not someone though that's gonna bash teachers or bash, that I had great professors there that really encouraged me for the most part, and like they supported me playing football. And now you also on the same thing, you do get a hating professor for being an athlete. And we had this one assignment my junior year, and we had to create a personal budget. It was something that had to do with money, personal finance class or something like that. Some business class that you had to take. You had to come up with your personal budget for once you're done with school. So like everyone's budget is like, $50,000 a year salary, whatever. Well, I had like an income of like $235 million, and I had like an insane car budget and crazy house budget, but I still had like a surplus at the end, right? So I did it right. But I got it was like a C, or she gave me like a D or something like that because I was unrealistic.
Wow.
I'm like, but being realistic was not a part of the assignment that you gave me. So that really, I really get chips on my shoulder really fast. I think that's the athlete in me.
She was trying to taper down your expectations. You were thinking big, which is the right thing to do.
In my mind, like 10 years from now, I think I'm going to blow that number out of the water.
Yeah.
I really do. With some of the projects that we've already got going right now and the promotes that I'm going to get off those deals. And when I get to recycle that money, I think I'm going to be able to send that back to her, be like, I was not realistic enough. I need to push that budget.
You should send her like a Christmas gift or something. You buy her a new car.
I could probably figure out because I still have that assignment somewhere. So I could probably figure out who the teacher was. I forgot which professor it was there, but
yeah, my whole thing with the school system right now is like they're teaching based on fundamentals that were prevalent 100 years ago, based on memorization. So 50 years ago we didn't have computers, we did not have technology, we didn't have social media, we didn't have Google, and so they are teaching based on memorization, which was an important skill back then. Now it's like you don't really got to memorize too much. You know the basics, you know how to talk the lingo, but there's not a whole lot that you need to memorize these days. And so to still teach those principles today is archaic in my opinion.
And I also think though what part of the problem is, because I have a daughter, and I think a lot of it is parents not holding kids accountable, and then they go to school. So like, then what's a teacher going to do? Because they can't slap you with a ruler anymore. They can't make you go sit in the corner anymore or do certain things. And so I think it really stems from that. And then it really becomes hard on the teachers. But then obviously also the curriculum and some of that stuff is just like, it's got to be adapted, because it's 2 parts of it. It's the parenting, and parents really got to freaking make their kids know that they got to respect. They got to respect like their parents. They got to respect other parents and other adults. They got to respect their teachers. They might not have to agree with them, but they got to respect them. And then also the curriculums and stuff like that, they need to change because it's just so antiquated. And I don't know.
And
that's
you
my point on that.
Yeah, I agree. And you got kids these days that are like, they're playing on their phones. They got all these apps, and you got social media and all this stuff going on where things are moving really quickly and it's engaging. But then it's like you got to sit in a classroom and memorize all this stuff. It's like then they get bored of it, and then teachers are like, "Hey, like your student's not a good student." It's like, no, like your kid's actually pretty smart. He just doesn't like what you're trying to teach him, and I don't blame him because I don't like doing that stuff either. You throw me a couple textbooks, I'm gonna start yawning.
I'm there, but I'm coaching soccer this spring. So 10-year-old
Are you?
girls soccer.
You got
Yep.
a 10-year-old
So
kid?
yeah,
Wow.
I
Congrats.
married into it. She's my stepdaughter technically, but
Okay,
she's my
gotcha.
daughter. So a lot
Amazing.
of people don't realize that. But yeah, so I'm gonna be coaching and but I view that people are like, how do you have the time to do that? I'm like,
Yeah.
do the math, dude. It's like 12 weeks. I got 2 practices a week, which are like an hour each. A game that's an hour long is 3 hours a week for I got like 36 to 48 hours. How do you not have the time?
Yeah.
You got 168 hours in a week. What are what are you doing? I mean, and it's important, right?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
it's important to be able to be a figure in not only obviously, my daughter's life, but other kids who might not have. I grew up with great parents. I mean, I was parented really
Mhm.
well and all that stuff. So I think to be able to be there for some other kids and maybe give them hope or give them a positive person in life or whatever, I think I'm excited to go do that. And I
Yeah.
get into the games. I mean, I was already coaching from the sidelines essentially last year. My wife is like, I don't know that guy, but I get into it and I like it.
Yeah, I get it, man. That's what it's all about. I volunteer with 11, he's 12 now, a 12-year-old boy
Cool.
who lives here in San Diego. Comes from a broken family. His father's not around. Single mom. He's got a sister. The mom had a boyfriend for a while who was abusive, but they were all 4 of them were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So we go hang out with them once a month, take them to like
Yeah.
a college basketball game, or we'll go down to the park, shoot some hoops, go
Yeah.
play some arcades, that sort of thing. But good kid. It's just, he's around a lot of like gang activity and a
Right.
lot of stuff that I wasn't
Right.
exposed to at 11, 12 years
Right.
old. So, but it is cool to, do that and kind of see them progress.
Yeah.
And, if I can just impact his life
It-
in just a 5%
It's
manner,
so
that's a big
important. It's
lever,
so important. And like I don't spend enough time talking about that stuff
Yeah.
as I probably should. And I think some of that stuff's going to change this year talking about some of that stuff, but because it's important and there is more to what I do than just business as well. I mean, I want to have success in every single area of my
Yeah.
life. I mean, spiritually, with my health, with my family, with business. And it's hard, not that everything is always even because you got to have some give and takes at certain times, right?
Mhm.
Nothing's ever going to be even. And sometimes there's stuff that takes a back seat for a week or a month or whatever, because you need to do what you need to do
Yeah.
at any given moment. But I want to have success in all those areas, not just one.
I agree with you in the sense that like wealth is not just about money. It's about all these different buckets, your family, your relationships, and your health, because all these things that we do to improve our financial situation and to build cool relationships and have families and kids. I don't have kids yet, but I want to one day. But all these things that we do to improve ourselves and better our lives, all that goes out the window if we don't have our health,
For sure.
And so when
Yeah.
I see, entrepreneurs or business people that are making good money, but then like they're super out of shape, I'm like, fuck, dude, like I don't ever want to be like that,
Yeah.
And so the harder I work to, make gains in my financial life, the more I want to like make sure I'm prioritizing my health.
Dude, we have an opportunity to live till we're 130, 150 years old.
You think so?
Dude, yes.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
I
How
do.
so?
You should read oh damn it, I can't remember the name of the book. Tony Robbins' book. The newest book that he has, it's about health. I can't think of the name right now, but if you just Google Tony Robbins' new book, that book's amazing. And I
Okay.
mean, he basically lays it out right there too. If you're taking care of yourself, and anyone under,
Alex, can you pull up that book so we can share it with the listeners?
it's a phenomenal book. It's kind of a long read, but it's just like it talks about so many different things, and like I've just started to implement a small portion of those things, and I feel Life Force by Tony Robbins.
Okay.
It's a great book.
I'm gonna have to pick it up.
But he talks about that, about extending life. And I mean, you look at that's the problem with a lot of the Medicaid stuff, Social Security, all that stuff. I mean, the problem is, people are drawn on Social Security when they're 60, 65 years old or whatever. That's how it's been forever. I mean, people were expected to only live till whatever. And then now, I mean, you got people that are retiring at 50, 60, whatever, and they're living till 85, 90, 95
Mhm.
regularly,
Mhm.
And that's a lot. And so you put stress on all those areas in the federal budget and all that stuff, but it's going to continue to get longer. I mean, think about all the things that are going to change over the next even 10 years
Yeah.
that we're going to be able to implement and take advantage of.
Medicine's
From a
better.
knowledge, but also, yeah, and it's not even the medicine, it's all the preventative, and this is what the Tony Robbins book talks a lot about. It's all the preventative stuff.
Mm.
It's preventative medicine. It's not. We have a great healthcare system right now for once you're sick. You got a great chance at living, but nothing is like really preventative.
Sure.
But that's what we're talking about. Always working out. Well, that's one of the ways you can be
Fitness,
preventative. What you're
nutrition.
eating, yeah,
What you're feeding your body.
yeah,
And like you said, people are living a lot longer. Like right now, I think the average life expectancy for like all male and female, I think in the world is like 77 and a half.
Yeah.
But I think by the time we get there, it's actually might be like 97 and a half. But
and you're gonna have people that are living to 120, kind of like people are living to like 95. It's not a shock when you meet someone that's 95 years old or 98 years.
no,
It's not a shock.
it's not.
35, 40 years ago, that was a lot less common.
Hey guys, real quick, I hope that you're finding value in this show. If you could do me a huge favor and drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you're listening on, it would mean the world to me. Also, if you know of anyone that would potentially benefit from this podcast, feel free to share it with them so we can help more people build wealth through real estate investing. Now back to the show. And I think that's a factor to why we're seeing housing continue to go up in pricing across America and why we're seeing a shortage of housing. One is not just because of supply, but I think because these baby boomers, the ones that are retiring, they're not going off in their retirement homes. They're actually staying in their homes. They're not selling them off.
My grandparents are in their 90s and they just moved out of their home that was 3,000 square feet.
Wow.
Just moved out of it.
In mid-90s.
They still own it. But yeah.
Yeah. And so I think you're seeing that contribute to why we're seeing, house prices tick up, and we're seeing a shortage of housing across America. It's not just San Diego. It's not just Chicago. It's all markets around the country, single family homes, but also apartment units to rent. And then, if you look at the millennials, a lot of them are looking to start families for the first time. And then the generation behind us, what is it, Gen Z? They're even bigger, and you're seeing them move out of their parents' house for the first time. They're going to, rent apartment units, and there's been a huge shortage of new supply. And I believe with this interest rate environment that we're in is only further worsening that gap of new supply.
See, and the thing is it took me a long time, but my thesis has always been with where I'm investing, because people are like, what are you doing in the Midwest? Like, why are you not investing in Florida or, wherever, all these places? And I'm like, yeah, you can talk about all the people moving to Florida, but you also have to look at how much is being built, because there's going to be a couple tough years potentially in some of these markets that, potentially in sub-markets of Florida, whatever, overbuilt for a while, and they might, for a few years have to eat it, whatever. But like I look at where I'm investing, and nothing's been built since 2007. The population's not growing at 2 or 3 or 4%, but it's growing at 0.25% over the last, consistently. That's what, but nothing new has been built.
Exactly.
And so we're able to get into some of those communities, and there's still populated community. We don't invest in anything. I mean, I like to be within a half hour of a population that's 250,000 plus. So it's still not like it's out in the middle. I mean, compared to San Diego, that's still like really small, right? But it's not like it's out in the middle of nowhere. We're still near Milwaukee. We're still near Madison. We're not that far from Chicago suburbs, right? And so for us to pick off some of these deals where just nothing has been built, we can buy it cash flow positive day one. We can increase rents 25 to 50%, sometimes just by putting new flooring and paint in. That's been our business model.
I love that you brought that up, because a lot of investors think, oh, let me go into a high growth market. But what they don't think about is these high growth markets this is where all the builders are targeting, and this is where you're seeing all the new construction. And so, you get into a high growth market, and, like Phoenix, for example, and next thing you know, they're building all these high rise multifamily towers where they're bringing on 700-800 units at a time, you know? And so I like that you said that. And that is one of the benefits of going into a smaller market, to what is you don't have a lot of that competition and a new supply, if you would.
Because I mean, everything that we have, secondary and tertiary markets. I mean, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And I really think that my thesis is going to be correct over the long term. And then on top of that, what I think the Midwest has going for it is you look at the Great Lakes. I mean, water in some of these places out west is becoming a huge issue. Well, how much bigger is that issue going to potentially be, unless we can really figure out how to use the ocean water, whatever? How much bigger of an issue is that going to be 15 years from now, right? We've already got places like California wanting to pump water from Lake Michigan out here. And we're like, hell no, So, I mean, what's that going to do to the Midwest potentially? We have space there. We have, so I feel like it has a lot of good things going for it. I think the long term is maybe we'll be able to pull this. Hopefully 15 years from now, we'll be able to pull this clip and be able to recall it. But that's my belief.
So which markets are you guys targeting right now?
We're Madison. I mean, Madison and Milwaukee submarkets.
Okay.
So everything's within 30 minutes of either Madison or Milwaukee.
And you self-manage?
Yep, we self-manage. So we got about 45 employees right now. And I got a chief operating officer, which I hired when we were about 400 units. It's when you own or operate. I never wanted to operate, actually. So I just wanted to, reading all these books, you learn about the benefits of owning real estate. I wanted to own the real estate.
Yeah.
I never thought about the management. when I first started.
You didn't
Right?
want to fix toilets at 2
No,
a.m.
now when I had the 4 unit and the first 2 4 units and stuff like that, obviously I was doing all of it, so I understood it. But then when we bought an 88 unit building, the bank said, "Well, you can't manage this yourself. You need a third party property manager." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." Well, that third party property manager ran it into the ground, so I just fired him without even asking the bank, and I knew I was breaking loan covenants. But I turned the property around, and that's just kind of how we started. And so the first hire that I made was a part-time maintenance tech. Our real first full-time hire was at the time a bookkeeper who's now our controller. She's been with us for 5 years now, 5.5 years. And because I got to a point where like I was at my max, I needed to hire. People are like who, people always ask me who's your first hire? Well, whatever you suck at, you need to hire out so that you can go do what you're good at to continue to grow your company.
Of course.
So then we got to about 400 units. And that's when I was like, again, because I was still overseeing the management company, I'm like, I need a solution to this so I can go out and take advantage of still buying deals and putting investors' money to work. So I hired a chief operating officer. Well, when I hired the chief operating officer only at 400, 500 units, I had to take my salary away because otherwise I wouldn't be able to pay her.
Sure.
So it's always those struggles when you're growing. And then whenever you plug one, hole that has water spewing through it, there's another one that freaking pops, right? And so you're always doing that. But that's why I want to get to 5,000 units, as fast as I can, because I feel like at 5,000 units, you're really able to, in a tight area, you're really able to have the scale that you need to be able to do it the way that you really, really want to do it. And,
that makes sense. And that's a good point, man. I feel like as entrepreneurs, like we're always solving different bottlenecks within the business and different growing pains, right? And
what's not talked about enough is we actually need to learn. One of my mentors tells me this is we actually need to learn how to manage a lot of these problems instead of trying to fix them, because a lot of them are never actually gonna go away. But the best operators, the best businesses, and the people that ultimately become the most successful people in the world on the Forbes list, whatever, from a business standpoint, successful, they're able to manage a lot of those issues. And they can solve some of them, but they're really able to manage a lot of them in the businesses. So my mindset started to change a little bit on that too.
Yeah, same here. And I'm also realizing, because you're pretty dialed, and so like I come in here, for example, on like a Monday, and I might have like 8 meetings back to back to back to back. And so there might be like one meeting to where, hey, like this goes a different direction, but I have to be able to like forget about that and then jump right into the next meeting and be like, hey, how's your day going? Blah, blah, blah. And like completely just keep moving. And I think that's like something that where I'm having a shift. It's like a lot of it's just managing different personalities and managing different types of meetings and that sort of thing throughout the day. And then being able to like analyze and make these calculated decisions.
And that's actually what I'm worst at. So you always hear about, Gary Vee always talking about he's the CEO of this. I'm not him. I've found that out over the last 2 years. Like when we're at 5,000 units, it's not me running Spaulding Group. My management, when I say Spaulding Group, I mean my management company.
Sure.
It's not me like being the president of that company.
You're
I'm the
not,
chairman
you're
of the
not
board.
making the decisions.
I'll be the chairman of the board.
Okay.
So ultimately I'm holding, that CEO, that president accountable, but it's not going to be me from that operation. I'm not the person that is meant to actually run a 5,000 unit management company. I'm the person that, I can go do acquisitions and find these deals and put the deals together and structure them and get the investors and get the money. That's so.
Now, if a high level decision comes your way, let's say, for example, hey, we have a roof that needs to be replaced. It's going to cost $30,000 at one of the buildings at your property.
I mean,
now they're going to come to you and you're going to make the ultimate decision, right?
I mean, how I see that working at that point, I mean, when you're at the level of, 5,000 units, I mean, I think you have a CapEx budget, and then you've got a president and a CEO that's going to ultimately be able to make those decisions. In my opinion, I think as I've got to learn more about governance in a company and all that stuff, I think, the board, they give the president, CEO parameters, right? And things that need to be accomplished. And so I hope that, we're at 5,000 units, I'm not having to give approval for a $30,000 roofing job. I hope that we have the system and the process and the parameters in place to be able to do that smoothly, very successfully, right? When the timing's right. Now, there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. And I mean, I think you get this and understand this because you have an operations business and you're a GP as well. Well, when you're not, it's very, very convoluted.
What do you mean when you say that?
Because if I'm the GP, but I'm also the president of the management company that I own, I need to be looking out for the management company to make sure the management company has the resources to operate. But at the same time, as a GP, I want to be as greedy as hell. And I don't want to give that management company I want to be able to have NOI be as high as possible. And I want to, because I'm driving value, right? So it's very convoluted and it's tough.
Well, it is the secret sauce at the same time. And you being
100%. I
vertically
agree.
integrated and
I agree
having
100%.
that management company is what gives you the control and ability to go out in the marketplace and have a competitive advantage.
Does your management company have any ownership equity in any of the buildings or properties that you have?
The management entity does not.
Right. So what we're actually looking at doing is shifting that. We're actually looking at having the management company have some ownership, and we'll put, as the owner of the management company, I'll put money in through the management company,
Okay.
so that it gets more of a drip and gets a little bit more, we've found different ways to be able to compensate the management company through different fees and all that stuff for success and everything. But to continue to scale and to be able to do what I want to be able to do at 50,000 units, I need to make sure that that entity that is really making everything operate and turn, and to get a property all the way through that machine, it takes a lot of money and resources. I need to make sure that machine has the money and resources to be able to do this over and over again at scale, not just at 1,800 units, but at 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 units. That's my mindset.
I love that. You're thinking big right there. But
So I'm also trying to drive the enterprise value of my management company. And so if it has some ownership in some of these things, I'm like, well, that drives the enterprise value as well.
Mm-hmm. You're creating an alignment of interest when you give the management entity a slice of ownership. Yep. Are you guys managing for third-party owners as well?
No.
Or just your own stuff?
I think in order for us to get to that point, I think what would have to happen is I don't know, and I can't tell the future, but my gut tells me if we got into third party, we would be buying a company that already, is managing 15,000 units.
To where it made sense to bring on, because you're going to get 2,000 units in one swoop versus one property here, one property there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
I mean, we did for a while, and it's just like, you know what? Like, it was detracting from the main goal.
Yeah.
In the moment, and actually our COO was the one that said, we need to let this property go. And I'm like, you're right. And so I had a conversation with the owner. I said, hey, I'll work with you and figure it out. I'm not just going to drop you cold. I'm not, but we need to work through this, and we need to find you another management company. I'm not doing this anymore. Because it was the same battle. Like, he expected for us to have management presence there, but didn't want to pay for it. And I'm like, and he's a great guy and he's having success, but I'm like, we have a shared manager right now, one at one of my properties and for your property, but you want my property to cover the entire salary of the person that's on site all the time? I'm like, no, right?
Yeah. Any business transaction has to be a win-win situation for both parties involved. Otherwise, it's not business. It's called stealing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about some stuff here that I actually haven't really talked about too much anywhere else.
We manage for third-party owners, but it's on a select basis. So it has to be the right client, it has to be the right owner, and it has to be the right property. Otherwise, we're just saying no.
But I mean, I think about it, like how excited am I going to be closing? The last deal we closed was $51 million. How excited am I going to be about managing, Rich, if you got a property out by me in Wisconsin that's 36 unit, how excited am I going to be about that financial return on the 36 unit?
And especially if I'm a dick too.
Right. I wouldn't be able to put, like, our team, I don't even know how it would even.
Sure.
I mean, what's that contract worth to us? Like 20 grand a year, right? When we just closed a $50 million deal, right?
Yeah. But on the flip side, like, let's say I came to you and I was like an older guy about to retire, and I was like, hey, I want you to manage these 1,300 units, and by the way, in a few years, I'll give you first crack at buying them.
That's different. That's a different scenario.
Yeah.
That's a different scenario. So, and that's also where I'm like, okay, that would be my way to be like, okay, I want to do third party again, because I know it could act as a pipeline. But again, I'd be asking myself right away, how do we get into buying a company that already has 20,000 units that they're third party managing?
Right.
Not even 1,500.
And do you see third party management companies within the multifamily space looking to offload that many units? I know I had a podcast guest on, Kenny and Crystal Simpson recently. They had a management company here in San Diego, much smaller scale, but they were managing, I think they got up to like 750 units. And they said, you know what, this is not for us. We're going to completely pivot out of the management stuff. And I believe they sold the management company, and they still have a slice of ownership in it. But do you see that come up often?
I'm not looking for it right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I
you could find it.
I'm sure if I looked for it, I'm sure I could find something, right? I mean, it's just not where, the opportunity of a lifetime comes by your face every 2 weeks, right? But if you're not looking for it, or you don't know what you're looking for, it just passes you by, right? And so I try to realize as many of those opportunities as possible, but those opportunities could already pass my face. I wouldn't even know it, because mean, they could slap me in the face. I wouldn't even know it because I'm just not even looking for it.
Yeah. No,
I'm like, how can we go and continue to buy, buy deals and ideally larger deals?
yeah. And that's the big lever, and that's the true lever. So because you guys are first trying to, buy assets and you're just an owner operator, you're not managing for third party. Are you guys running this management company as lean as possible?
We have been, and now that's why now I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can we get more resources to that management company, because we need it to grow.
Yeah.
We need it to grow
To
and
build the payroll, hire people.
yeah, to be able to really, especially as I get out of that more, where I'm not there as much, like, because I mean, I'm essentially working for free when I'm in the management company. I get paid very, very little from it,
Yeah.
right? Compared to where my money's coming from.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
you're
the
probably
same way.
Yeah, you're the same way.
I'm
Because we don't have the resources.
Yeah.
We're not big enough. We need more scale.
I'm a W-2 employee for my management company and Summers Capital,
Yeah.
and I pay myself $500 from each company every 2 weeks. That's my salary.
Right. So I get paid even a little bit more than you, and I know it's not enough. I mean, but that's what I'm talking about, and that's the scale game, and you get to a point where like you really start to see it and feel it, and as if I'm looking to replace myself as president at some point one day, I know probably what I have to pay to be able to get someone that's close to what I'm doing, and at that point we might have to backfill another position if we hire someone else to put me in that spot, right? So. And it just takes resources.
Learning to become a successful real estate investor can take a lot of time and dedication, which some people just don't have. If you're one of these individuals, this doesn't mean you can't invest in real estate. My company, Summers Capital, is buying a bunch of boutique hotels right now, and you can invest with us in these deals without having to do any of the work. Our team sources the deals, we secure the lending, we take care of all the renovations, and we even handle all the day-to-day operations with our in-house management company, making it truly hands-off and passive for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, go to summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show. So tell me, let's go back a little bit. You mentioned you did your first deal at age 22. What was that deal all about?
That was a 4-unit apartment deal.
Where at?
In Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, which is about 25 minutes out of Madison. Small town. We're talking like 15,000 people. Madison, the greater Madison area is about 600,000 people. So Fort Atkinson being about 25 minutes out of Madison, 15,000 people, little 4-unit. It was built in the 70s. Bought it for $195,000.
Wow.
Rents were like $500 a month. I think there's actually one bedroom there that was like $450 a month.
What are the rents now?
Well, so I sold that one. When I sold it, the rents were up to like $850, $900. Okay. But right away, I mean, it was cash flow positive day one. Went through, new cabinets, new countertops, paint, some flooring here and there. Spruced up the common areas a little bit. And I mean, we were cranking. We were off and running.
Yeah. And so what was the next deal after that?
So then when I got some immediate success in that deal, which by the way, the 4-unit deal, the very first day that I bought it, a water heater went out. So it was like $1,200 out of my pocket or whatever it was, $900, which was like a full 3 months of cash flow on that deal at the time. And I'm like, what did I do?
Right.
I'm like, shit, welcome to real estate investing. But immediately once that deal started doing really well, it was like maybe 25 days, 30 days later, I sent out mailers to that entire city. So that was the start of the database, right? That I was talking about before, the property database. About 4 months later, the guy that happened to own the property right next door, because I made it known in the letter what property I bought. I put an address in there. And I'm glad I did, because the guy reached out and said, hey, I saw the address on there. I happen to own the property right next door that happened to share a driveway. So we were able to buy that one for like $185,000. He did, so we got 80% from the bank. He held seller financing 15%, and I only had to put 5% into the deal.
Wow.
So, I put in $5 or $10,000 or whatever for that one. And so we bought those two properties for total value like $370,000, $375,000, something like that. And a year later, we refied, pulled out $70,000, and then 3 years later, we sold them for like 600. And it's like in 2017, we sold them for like $650,000, right? So at that point, that gave me like $350,000. I went and bought a value add 10 unit, 1031 exchange. Went and bought a 47 unit. The 47 unit, I ended up keeping 25% for myself off the top of the equity. The 75% that was left is what we raised money for, which my 1031 funds went for a portion of that equity. And then I raised $600,000, $700,000 from other investors. And that was really the first deal that we had multiple investors.
And what was that experience like? The first capital raise, the first time bringing investors in?
Yeah, it took me a long time to raise $600,000, and now I can raise $11 to $20 million in like 9 hours now. And it took, So back then I had to fight for it. We had to actually, the seller is actually, he's a guy that's referred a lot of investors to us. He's invested in some of our deals now as well. But the seller was gracious enough to work with me. He liked my vision. He liked my, how I was enthusiastic about what I was doing. I was young. And so he was working with us. We backed up closing a little bit. We were able to fill the rest of what we needed, but it was tight. And so then it put a little stress on our CapEx program because we started doing it out of cash flow. So we ended up having to pause distributions there for like 2 years because we just plowed all the money back in. But that deal we bought for 2.6, it just appraised. We just refinanced it this last summer and appraised for 5.5 or 5.3.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you bought it for 2.6, appraised for 5.3.
5.3.
And how much would you say you put into the reno and all that and improvements?
We were like $1.5 million in.
$1.5 million. Okay.
Yep.
And so now you guys are holding that long term?
Yeah. So now all the initial equity's back plus
To the investors?
plus some. Yeah. And then on top of that, we still have like $800,000 in the checking account that we're going through, and we're doing new window. That's the old. I don't know if you've seen the Instagram post, the older property.
Yeah,
That's
your historic
property.
one.
We're putting all new windows in, and so we're doing
love
more
that.
improvements and stuff.
It's a good looking building. It's all
yeah.
brick.
It's right on the river. That's
Yeah.
Janesville, Wisconsin. Yeah, all brick.
I love that.
It was a manufacturing facility. It was built in like the 1880s or something like that.
And what you said, like, this is one thing that a lot of traditional people that invest in the stock market and the 401k, they don't understand about real estate investing is, you can get a return in the stock market, great. But what they don't realize is, like, if you buy value add real estate and you do it properly, you can refinance all your proceeds back out, leaving you no money in the deal.
Yeah.
And an infinite return on investment moving forward. You can't get an infinite return on investment in the stock market. Last time I checked, the S&P 500 is down pretty significantly over the last 6 to 9 months.
Yep.
And so that is one thing that a lot of people don't realize, to where this is a powerful asset class. And then in addition to that, not only do you not have money in the deal and an infinite return on investment, but you have all the tax benefits to go along with that.
Yeah, I haven't paid state or Fed income tax. I think it's like 5. So 2022 will be 5 of 7 years because of accelerated depreciation, and that whole thing. But
in
yeah,
another 3 or 4 years, rents are going to continue to go up. Interest rates will go back down eventually. Do another nice refi and pull another chunk out. And guess what? Those proceeds on a refinance are tax deferred.
Yep.
And you can use that to go buy more real estate.
Well, the refi, it's a loan, right? Loans, whenever you pull a loan, you're not getting taxed on a loan, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't have to worry about that. But now what you do have to pay attention to is, okay, if you do sell it and not want a 1031 forward someday, that you might have some big recapture on the depreciation that you took, right? Which could be,
that's true.
Which you can run into a issue with that if you're not aware of it and all that stuff. But if you
plan
a 1031 forward, you'll be all right.
Right.
But if you ever want to stop 1031 forward, you refinance too much, you accelerate depreciation.
Yeah.
You can kind of put yourself in a little bit of a pickle. So you got to be aware of that. And
for sure. Or it might put you in a situation to where you're forced to 1031 into a deal that maybe is not the most opportune deal to buy, but you're doing it because of all the taxes.
Yeah.
That is interesting. But okay, so that deal you guys are holding, you're doing all new windows right now. And then tell me about the biggest one you just did. You said it was last year. How many?
460 units, is 51 million, which I know for out here, you guys would be like, that's probably like 500 million.
Yeah. So you paid about 120 a door ish?
All in, something like that.
All in. Okay. And so that was a $21 million raise, you said?
Yeah, we raised 21.
Yeah. What is it like raising 21 million?
So that was also interesting because we were, like I said, we were coming out of the $11 million raise, which that was actually the biggest one I'd done to date, was 11 million, right? So I go from 11 million to then 90 days later having to do, and by 90 days have 21 million. And for me, it wasn't actually the number. It was committing and wrapping the property up, and then it being that number in the actual times that we were headed into with interest rates starting to rise.
What time frame was this?
We closed the 372 unit that we raised $11 million. We closed that deal May 2022, like May 15th, 2022. May 16th or 17th, I lock up the 460 units, and I do the math. I'm like, obviously I had already done the math, but I realized that we're going to have to raise $19 to $21 million. And
because coming off of a raise like that, you got to think like, okay, well, am I going to be able to get another chunk like that? Because you exhaust your investors at a certain point, and so you have to find some new ones, right?
Yeah.
And so how was that transition?
It was kind of a blur, honestly. The first of that 21 million, the first 12 to 15 came pretty quick, and then it started to be like, okay, now I got to stretch and dig again, and we'll figure it out. So that portion, that the rest of that when you include the whole 21 million, it probably took me 65, 75 days to be able to do. And but again, I wasn't, my biggest doubt in getting the money was because obviously everybody was starting to realize things were changing with the interest rates, and we didn't know yet what our final interest rate was going to be because we hadn't rate locked on that yet. Because obviously you don't want to rate lock too prematurely before surveys, environmentals come in, because now if you rate lock prior to that, and if something pops up on those and you got to kill a deal, now you got big fees to unravel the rate lock, what you rate locked. And so that was the most I don't know what feeling I had. Just
Uncomfortable.
It's what made me get up every morning at 5:30, go to bed every night at midnight. And I mean, my wife knows. She's like, "Is this gonna be the last one for a little while?" Because when I was in that zone, it's like I'm all in, and I'm like going to war every day. And I'm somewhat what can seem very stressed out. I don't feel stressed out all too often, but can definitely seen that way to other people. So it was just interesting because of the amount coming off the other raise, and then with interest rates coming up and us not having to rate lock yet.
Yeah.
So it's just like I felt like I had to go into overdrive and do that. So it was good to be able to close that one though, and it's off. And everything we bought in 2022 is, we are absolutely crushing it. Everything that we bought in 2022. I mean, the $41 million deal, that's easily, I wouldn't sell that for less than 50 right now, based on we're getting 25 to 50% rent increases.
Wow.
I mean, so we're off and running. Our operations team this is the best they've operated here. The last 3 to 5 months is the best we've ever operated.
And why is that?
I think it's again, the reason we hired a second regional property manager, and she's a home run hitter. Like, she's great, and I think it's a lot of it's the people and that we have on the operations side right now, and the team that we're building.
Yeah, I see all your social media posts, and I encourage all the listeners out there to go shoot Justin a follow. He's got a bunch of great content that he's pushing out. But
Appreciate that.
what I love about your content is that you're out there at the different properties, you're shooting content, you're showing the improvements that you guys are putting in, new windows, new flooring, etc. And I think that's cool, man, what you're doing, and you're sharing it, and you're also helping others.
Well, and I'm transparent because I know, like we were talking about before the show, if we bought an off-market deal in 2021, variable rate, value add deal, but we bought it off market at a 5.5 cap, not a 3 cap. And we know what we're doing operationally. And the interest payment every single month went from $45,000. The next month it was 53, and then it was 65, and then it was 78, and now it's up to $130,000. We're about to refinance the property. But yeah, that was a scary time, right? I just want to go back to the operations team a little bit. I think also what's helped us operationally, and if you ask my team this, they probably say, yeah, right. But I feel like I underwrite relatively conservative. Like, by the time we hit the second year, I don't remember the last deal that we've hit. Let's say the third year. I don't remember the last deal that we've hit the third year of actual operations and haven't been hitting our 5-year numbers. It's great operations, but it's also being able to
say that one more time.
I don't know that we've ever hit a deal where we were actually in the third year of it. So we've owned it for 3 years, and that we haven't been hitting the 5th year of projections from the revenue and NOI number.
Got it.
So that's great from operations and our team at Spaulding Group, the management company.
It is.
But it's also, I conservatively underwrite. If you ask my team, they say, yeah, right, you're bullshit. We call it bullshit. You don't conservatively underwrite. We know what we have to go through to operate this property this way. But I look at it, I conservatively underwrite, which I also think there's a lot of people just raising money, wanting a fee, didn't really know how to underwrite, or just underwrote to make the deal work. We weren't doing that.
Yeah, there's a lot of groups out there, and they're living off of acquisition fees,
right,
and they're being aggressive with their rent growth assumptions. I mean, 21 was a crazy year
right,
for multifamily, and even I would say the second half of 21, there was a lot of buyer groups out there and a lot of money chasing just all sorts of stuff, and we saw insane rent growth, and people were kind of thinking, hey, like the world was just shut down. And there was a worldwide pandemic, and the government did not allow a recession to happen. And then they printed 40% of the money supply in 2020. And then going into 21, the rates were so low. Everyone was buying whatever, and they were like, hey, we're just going to make this pencil. And you were seeing people overpay for assets, but like you said, buying 2 and 3 caps. And assuming they're going to get 10% rent growth. So
that goes. I forgot for a second where I was going with where my interest payment went from $40,000 a month up to $130,000 a month. In my Instagram account. On my Instagram account, I'm also very transparent, which has actually helped me get a lot of investors, because I have a post out there telling at the property saying, this property, this piece of brick right here It's gone from $45,000 a month interest up to $130,000 a month interest. And here's what we've done to combat it. Here's what we're doing. Here we're about to refi. And knock on wood that the refi goes through and we're still good and rates don't go crazy through the roof over the next 30 days here. But who else is putting that out there about their own projects?
No one else. No one else.
But the thing is what I know is if I'm feeling that the way we bought that deal off market, there's got to be a lot of people out there that are really hurting that it just hasn't come to light yet. What I think is going to be interesting is how are these deals actually going to make it to guys like you or me? Or are other groups, because I know there's a ton of money out there just sitting and waiting to be guys that go in and kind of act as another bridge or recap. And now it's not going to be great for the sponsor because they're going to get their initial investors, their returns are going to get cut in half. They're going to lose their ass. But it might be a better alternative than losing the property or potentially having to sell the property. So it's going to be interesting what happens if those properties actually make it to the market, or since it's not all dried up, the money's not dried up like it was in 08, 09, there's still money on the sidelines for groups that can come in to recap people out. Now, those people will never, at least for the next handful of years, really put big money to work again, in my opinion, because of how much their investors lose their ass. But it could be a better alternative than maybe what they have coming.